What's going on, everybody? Kim Becker and Arif Dean here with your weekly AMA for the Colorado Avalanche, who are hot right now. Arif, 6 straight wins. They are 14-2-2 in their last 18 games, and tonight they host the New Jersey Devils in Ball Arena. Just kind of give me your thoughts on this team and where they stand right now.
They're the team we expected them to be. I mean, the crazy part about it is, for as long as you and I have been doing this, it's been about the injuries. It's been about the lack of depth. It's been about all the issues this team has been facing, but they haven't even rectified all of that. They have had some savvy moves. They traded Dryden Hunt for Dennis Malgin way back. That added a piece to their depth that they could use. Then they went out and obviously got Matt Nieto. That added another depth piece they can use. Then they went out a few days ago and traded for Jack Johnson. So they've added another depth piece of a defenseman that they can use as a depth piece, more than Englund, who they shipped off. But they're still without Cale Makar for a lot of these wins. They're still without Gabe Landeskog for the entire season. Darren Helm hasn't played since this 14-2-2 run started. So they haven't necessarily rectified the injury issues entirely. It's just not the overbearing amount that it was at the beginning of the year. And despite the fact that they still haven't had Makar for these wins, or Landeskog all year, any of that kind of stuff, they are still the second best team in the Western Conference by points percentage. They're the hottest team in the NHL. Their starting goalie is 10-1-1 in the last 6 weeks. Things are looking up for the Colorado Avalanche.
Things are definitely looking up. And not only all of that, they also shut out the Las Vegas Golden Knights 3-0, who were really the team to beat. I mean, talk about that game. What did you see in the team during that matchup?
So second best points percentage in the Western Conference. The only team ahead of them is exactly that, the Vegas Golden Knights. They shut them down. It was as boring and simple a game as you want as an Avalanche fan.
Right.
Because Vegas had no chances, and when they did, Georgiev made a big save. Mikko Rantanen with that 6th steal, 14 seconds in, scores and makes it 1-0, and it was over right there. Right there and then. The Avs over the last couple of weeks, in terms of points percentage, it's Vegas, then Colorado, then Dallas, then LA, then Minnesota, then Seattle, then Edmonton, then Winnipeg. It takes that long to get down to Winnipeg. But when they played Winnipeg on Friday, they were ahead of the Avalanche in points in and points percentage. Colorado beat them. Vegas ahead of them. They beat them. The New Jersey Devils, third best team in the NHL. They play them tonight, Wednesday night. And then on Saturday, their very next game after this, they have the Dallas Stars, the team that's right there with them at the top of the Central Division. So, you know, if they play the way they played against Vegas, against a lot of these other teams, they're going to continue to win games.
Yeah, and that's what we want to see. That's absolutely where we were expecting them to go. Hopefully, obviously, you know, you said we were talking about the injuries and kind of the slumps that they'd been in, but this is where we wanted to see them. The odds makers think that this is exactly where they were going to end up. They're still pretty high up there when it comes to Stanley Cup and the West and who may win. So very exciting things here. A good game tonight for sure. It would be another big statement win over this Devils team, who is also pretty good.
Yeah.
But let's talk about Mikko Rantanen. You mentioned him and that goal that he scored. He is now the fastest player in an Avs sweater to reach 40 goals. And so our first question is from Hajduk fans. Why not 50? I'm rooting for Mikko to do it. What do you think?
I think he can do it. I mean, he's on pace for 57. He's at 40. The Avs are at 58 games. He's played all 58. Can Mikko Rantanen score 10 goals in his next 24 games? I think so. A lot of people think so. It's funny. Before the game, I was talking to another reporter about him even hitting the 50 goal mark. And that reporter mentioned, well, he's in for another 2-3 goal game here and there. And then lo and behold, he scored 2 goals that same night. He has scored in each of the last 5 games. This is what it means to be an NHL scorer, or an NHL forward that scores goals. He was 6 games without a goal, and now he has scored in each of the last 5 games. He has 6 goals in these last 5 games.
Wow.
So in his last 12, he's still on pace he still has 6 goals in his last 12 games, which again, he just needs 10 and 24. It's a very reasonable number to hit. I think he goes a little bit above 50. But the reason why Hajduk fans are the ones asking is because in 2003, Milan Hajduk was the last Avalanche player to hit 50 goals. He did it in that season where Peter Forsberg won the Art Ross Trophy and the Hart Trophy as the league MVP for the regular season, that is. And Milan Hajduk hit 50 goals and was and won the Maurice Rocket Richard. He had the most goals that year, and it was a big number for him. It was a big number for the Colorado Avalanche. The only other times the Avalanche have had 50 goal scorers outside of that 2003 season from Hajduk, Joe Sakic had it in each of the 2 years they won the Stanley Cup. Yeah. In 2001, he had 54, which is an Avalanche record. Wow. In 1996, he had 51. On both of those occasions, he played all 82 games. Rounding out the top, Milan Hajduk had that 50 in 03, and then 41 for McKinnon back in 2019, for Hajduk in 2001, for Sakic in 99. So Mikko Rantanen is 2 goals away from being 4th place behind Sakic, and Hajduk for most goals in an Avalanche sweater. And if he scores 15 in the next 24 games, which is a very reasonable number because he's on pace to score 17 in the next 24 games, he will have the most goals in Avalanche history in a season.
Some incredible names to be amongst right there. Wow, what a throwback, but how exciting. Also, just the fact that you said Joe Sakic played all 82 games. I mean, I know there's a lot of players that do that, but just think about that, playing 82 hockey games with the physicality.
It used to be the norm. It's kind of different now where it's kind of tough to get there. Like Nathan McKinnon played all 82 back in 2018-19, the season before COVID. And that was kind of like, wow, he did it. And he hasn't done it since. And who knows if he ever will. And he obviously won't do it again this year. He missed 11 earlier in the year.
It's incredible. It truly is. All right, we'll move on here. Who would be the toughest draw for the Avs in the first round, do you think?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, so it's hard to say toughest exactly, but because I think they'll be fine with whoever. Okay. If I'm the Avalanche, I don't want to play Edmonton in the first round. And there's a chance that Edmonton is that second wildcard spot because the high scoring could get a little crazy there, which we saw in the Western Conference Final last year. Granted, the Avs swept them. I think the biggest thing that the Avalanche could face in the first round that would be different from what they've had in years past is facing that tough goalie. Where last year they had the Nashville Predators, but UC Saros was injured before the playoffs, and they had to play Dave Riddick and Connor Ingram, and they blew past them in 4 games. But if you end up playing the Winnipeg Jets, it's Connor Hellebuck, who, funny enough, last Friday they scored 4 goals on their first 5 shots on Connor Hellebuck. If they end up playing the Dallas Stars, for some reason they drop down, it's Jake Ottinger. Players like that, you don't want to get stuck playing a hot goalie, because a hot goalie, usually when you see NHL upsets, it's because of a hot goalie. So I would say one of those top goalies in the NHL, the 2 names that stick out to me are Connor Hellebuck and Jake Ottinger, and obviously UC Saros, but it looks like Nashville's starting to sell. They're probably not going to make the playoffs. They're still within reach, but you never know. I would say a hot goalie, one of those better goalies in the NHL, is who you might probably want to avoid most in the first round. But I would also say that I'm pretty confident whoever they get, even if it's the Calgary Flames and Nazem Kadri, if Calgary jumps back into that wildcard spot, they should be pretty good for the first round.
Okay, good to hear. Whew. Okay, if you had to give a contract extension to either JT Compher or Bo Byram, who would you pick and why? I added the why.
Okay. You can't overthink this one. It's absolutely Bowen Byram.
Okay.
JT Compher is having an unbelievable season, and JT Compher's season is why the Avalanche might not bend over backwards to try to find a second line center at the deadline and pay too much for one, because JT's on pace for well over 50 points. He's been doing a heck of a job, a very admirable job. He's at 41 points already in 58 games. That's a career high by far, and he's still got, again, 24 games to keep adding to it. The big thing for JT is, number one, it's a contract year. He's a really great center, but he's a 2-3 center. He's mostly a 3 that can slot in at 2. And the Avalanche had him at number 2 center. We often forget that the Avalanche won 16 playoff games. 4 of them were without a healthy Nazem Kadri, and they were 4 important games. There were 3 and 4 in the Western Conference Final and 1 and 2 in the Stanley Cup Final. And in the 5 games that JT Compher was a second line center a year ago, they were 4 and 1. And again, at the most important time of the year. So, and obviously Kadri came back, scored the game winner in the very next game. But in those 5 games, JT did an admirable job. However, it is still Bowen Byram, because the Avalanche have a riches of defense right now. A healthy Bowen Byram, a healthy Devon Toews, and a healthy Cale Makar are potentially 3 of the top 10, 3 of the top 15 defensemen in the NHL. Like, Bo is that good. And the reality is, you might not sign Devon Toews when his contract expires. So Byram's the guy that you want to build around, either him or Taves. You want to keep both around. And given Byram's age, I know he's had the concussion issues, but for the second year in a row, he's come back from those issues and has played lights out like he is right now.
Yeah.
A big reason why the Avalanche are hot is because of Bo right now.
Okay.
So it's definitely Bo. It's 100% Bo. That's no slight at JT Compher, but it is a lot easier to replace what JT Compher brings to the team than what Bo and Byram brings to the team.
Okay. What were your impressions of C-Mac during this press conference?
He's a very, so C-Mac, Chris McFarland, the Avalanche's GM, obviously the position usually held by Joe Sakic, but since he was kicked upstairs and C-Mac's now the new GM, he's the one speaking to us before the deadline. Joe Sakic was always a poker face in his very respectful Joe Sakic way. Chris McFarland, again, didn't give us much, but was very, very thorough and very easy to talk to. Like, he gives you the information. He tells you what the team is looking for in terms of how they sort through their process of finding what they do. Basically admitting that, you know, if the team can find a good trade where the first round draft pick is involved, they'll trade their first rounder. If they find a good trade where a player with term is involved, they'll trade for it. And he kind of walked us through the process of what they do to get to that conclusion. So I thought he was very thorough. He was very easy to talk to. He also was very, you know, he was a lot more straightforward than I thought he would be on like the injuries of Gabe Landeskog, Eric Johnson, how they're feeling and what the hope is for them, which for Gabe Landeskog, just to kind of spoiler alert, if you haven't listened to the press conference, there's no guarantee he's even going to come back. That's what it sounds like. The team just doesn't know. But I thought he was really great to talk to, and you can see why he's one of the best GMs in the NHL at building relationships, because I think other GMs enjoy talking to him too. And you know, it's his personality, it's his persona, but it's also something you can use to your advantage to win some trades.
Cool. Awesome. Well, speaking of the trade deadline, it is this Friday at 1 p.m. Mountain Time. That's March 3rd. I know there's going to be a lot of movement probably from us recording this to Friday, but what is your final trade deadline prediction for the Avs?
Okay, so without using any player names specifically, I think one of two things are going to happen. So I was saying about a month or two ago that they need quantity as much as they need quality. Yeah. Well, the additions of Dennis Malgin, Matt Nieto, and Jack Johnson are kind of satisfying that quantity approach. Yeah. So I think they're going to do one of two things. They're either going to add a big name piece, and it's going to take a lot of creativity. And we're going to talk about a couple of them here soon. Someone like a Boone Jenner or Nick Schmaltz, maybe even Kevin Hayes, even though I'm not a huge fan of that name. So they're either going to add that big piece to satisfy the quality part of what I said earlier, or they're going to double down on the quantity and bring in another depth forward, maybe somebody like Alex Barabanov from San Jose, maybe even Nick Bonino, also from San Jose, maybe Nick Bjugstad from Arizona, players of that ilk, maybe Ernie from Detroit, guys like that, as well as a depth defenseman maybe, and just kind of double down on this idea of like, the way this team is playing right now with the guys they have, add a Cale Makar, potentially add a Gabe Landeskog, and you're looking pretty dang good. So let's just get a whole lot of bodies in there, because our big issue this year wasn't the fact that we lost Kadri and Burakovsky. It was the fact that we just didn't have a lot of depth when we had injuries. So let's double down on the depth. Let's have, 3, 4, 5 extra capable NHL bodies that can play if we deal with injuries, and we'll be good to go. Even if it's a Cale Makar, even if it's a Gabe Landeskog, we've proven we can still win games. So I think they're going to go one of two ways. They'll either bring in that big name and satisfy that quality. If that trade's not out there, if it's impossible, which obviously O'Reilly's off the market, Bo Horvat's off the market, Jonathan Taves is off the market, Sean Monahan's off the market. So it's looking a little bit tougher. Well, Sean Monahan most likely is off the market. It's looking a little tougher to bring in that big name. So if they don't get creative, I think they'll double down on the quantity.
Okay. Good to know. We've got one more question here. You mentioned one of these names here. This one from Daddy Prosciutto. Also love that handle right there. Boone Jenner or Schmaltz, how do we make it work up against the cap in the offseason?
Nick Schmaltz is my guy.
Okay.
Before it was even known, which now it has been kind of confirmed that the Arizona Coyotes are shopping him, he's my guy.
Okay.
And the reason, so now that we know he is on the market, so after this year, he's got 3 more years under contract. He makes $5.85 million a year. So if the Coyotes are going to eat any bit of the salary, it's going to cost quite a few dollars, which the whole purpose of Arizona unloading so many bodies is that they're trying to unload as much money as possible because they are in the situation right now where they are, where they're playing at a college rank. They're in the process of building a new rank, the ownership and all that. So they need to offload money more than they need to add money. So if the Avalanche get Arizona to eat some cap, it's going to take a lot of convincing and a lot of assets, or you get another team to broker it in and you pay them a lot. But let's just say, under the assumption you're getting Nick Schmaltz for his $5.85 million, number one, it'll probably cost you an Alex Newhook. And people might think that's an overpay, but you wish that Alex Newhook could grow into the point per game player that Nick Schmaltz is. Yeah. Nick just turned 27 several days ago. He's a young forward. He's not an old guy. He's very good at what he does. He puts up points on a bad Arizona team, and before that on Chicago. He is a point producer. So it'll probably cost you an Alex Newhook, or you can get away from trading Alex Newhook, give up your first rounder, maybe 2 first rounders, given the way that some of these trades have gone this year. It'll cost you a ton of draft capital, which I also fully support, because I think the Avalanche need to win in this window. Yeah. Well, win again in this window, I should say. So Nick Schmaltz is my guy. How do you make the salary cap work this summer? It'll probably involve a Sam Girard. And as much as people love to harp on Sam Girard and love to trade Sam Girard every chance they get from their Twitter machines, Sam Girard, and so this last month and a half, 2 months, the Avalanche have been so good because Bo Byram came back from his injury and has been exceptional. We saw Josh Manson enter the lineup and has been a very big piece of that. We also saw Jack Johnson get acquired, and he was great in his debut. But it was also Sam Girard turning around what was a very, very, very bad start to the season. He was not playing well. He wasn't producing. Now he is. He's producing. He's confident. He's rushing the puck up better. And even when he's not putting up points, he's a difference maker. And that's why you see him often playing 23, 24 minutes, sometimes more than Devontae's or Bo and Byram, or even both. So Sam Girard's a very good player, but we just saw the deal that the Nashville Predators made, trading away Matthias Ekholm. So Sam Girard, you could get a pretty dang good haul for him. You can recoup a lot of the assets that you're going to give away in this Nick Schmaltz deal. You can turn around, try to find a cheaper defenseman with those assets and fit it all under the cap. I always go back to one thing, and it's the Avalanche. And I know things change, but the Avalanche last summer, in July, August, offered Nazem Kadri a 4-year deal at $24-25 million. They were willing to pay Nazem Kadri $6.25 million for the next 4 years. Whatever salary cap idea they had in their brain, however they were going to allocate the money to make that work, they can do the same thing with Nick Schmaltz, because it wasn't just a 1-year thing for Kadri. It was a 4-year deal. So even with McKinnon's extension kicking in next year, Val Nichushkin now makes more money. Bo Byram, Alex Newhook, they both need new contracts. Sam Girard's on the books for $5 million. JT Compher probably going to walk. Even with all of that, they still had a salary cap plan in mind for if Nazem Kadri accepts a $6.25 million deal, we're going to fit him in, and this is how we're going to do it. So take out Kadri 6.25, add in Nick Schmaltz at 5.8. They can find a way to do it. Like I said, it'll probably involve someone like a Sam Girard is my prediction. But if that's the case, you make it work, you trade, you get good assets for Girard, and you turn around and find another defenseman to replace him. He's not an easy guy to replace, as much as people want to, again, harp on him for his game, but it is possible. So Nick Schmaltz is definitely my guy. To touch on the second name, Boone Jenner, it's a very similar type of thing, except he's not as productive. He's more of a two-way forward, which is fine. That's what you had at JT Compher. He'll replace JT Compher. He'll be your 2C and kind of slot down to 3C if or when Alex Newhook develops into that role, again, assuming you don't trade him. But he's only at 3.75 without any money eaten. So similar idea to Schmaltz, just a lot cheaper. But obviously with Schmaltz, you're going to get what you pay for that extra $2 million. He's a point per game guy right now.
All right, Arif, thank you so much. A lot of really good info right there ahead of the trade deadline. We'll have a really fun episode next week after we know what has been finalized. But to everybody tuning in, thank you so much for joining us.
I will also say before you close it out is, if Boone Jenner or Nick Schmaltz get traded before this goes up, please don't come at me, dear. We need a second to get this up on the internet. That's true. With the way the NHL trade deadline's going this year, I could be traded in the next 5 minutes.
That's very true. Yeah.
So at this point, just ignore the entire conversation about Schmaltz or Jenner if any news about them comes up before this is online.
A little preface right there. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you. I will see you next week.